As a result of these concerns and a feeling that perhaps something had gone wrong, there were 1,000 protesters back in Tahrir Square around 6 in the morning Cairo time, at which point the regular army command put in an appearance to say that they were sorry for what had happened, that it was a breakdown in discipline, and it was not to be seen as something they approved of. And in fact, there's been a statement subsequently on the Supreme Military Council's website calling what happened last night unintended and saying there will be no prosecutions of any demonstrators as a result of what happened. So perhaps not as serious as was initially feared, not perhaps some kind of regression, some sign of creeping authoritarianism entering back into the system. And on another level and from another perspective here in Egypt, Tamor, there are many people in Cairo who feel that the disruption of the protests has served its purpose up till now. And they do want life to go back to normal. They do want a sort of a routine to be not forcibly imposed, but encouraged. So not everyone, as the protesters will do, will see this as a dangerous development.
All right, Anita McNaught live in Cairo. Thanks, Anita. Now, in Yemen, there has been a big show of support for the president in the capital, Sana'a. But tens of thousands of people across the rest of the country have joined marches against the long-running rule of Ali Abdullah Saleh. He has ordered the formation of a committee to open talks with the protesters, who are demanding that he step down. And in Jordan, there have also been more demands for political and economic reforms and another strong police presence in the capital, Amman, as the calls were made to limit the powers of King Abdullah. The leader of Jordan's largest opposition group, Hamza Mansour, says people's patience is running out because of the government's slow moves towards reform. Now, South Sudan will become the world's newest country on July the 9th, and with it comes the daunting task of state building. Now, much of the South was destroyed during the Civil War, so officials will be starting from scratch, and creating jobs is one of their biggest challenges. Harun Mutasa reports from Juba.
18-year-old Gloria is gaining some much-needed skills. According to the United Nations, around 85% of adults in southern Sudan can't read or write. That's why this auto mechanics class could give Gloria the head start she's looking for.
Others are getting afraid because there are no jobs. If you have certificate, you will not get a job here in southern Sudan. But if you have the knowledge of doing such things, it will help you.
Many schools were destroyed during the Civil War. Juba Technical College is being rebuilt by Plan International, one of many non-governmental organizations working in the region. Southern Sudan will gain independence on the 9th of July. Job creation is one of many challenges facing this new nation. There are no unemployment figures, but officials say the number is far too high. Victoria is looking for anyone who can employ her as a social worker, but there are no vacancies.
You can see many people there looking for jobs and they are not getting anything to do. Yeah. Then some of them maybe they may think to go and do some other things like business, but it's very hard to start.
Officials hope to one day have a dynamic economy that will create jobs, but right now the resources simply aren't there.
The challenges are actually those connected with funds. So to counter this, people will have to sit down and try to plan better how to manage these finances.
But it's not just about creating jobs for those already in southern Sudan. Officials say close to 400,000 Southerners still living up in the north plan to head back to the region, and some fear this will put more pressure on already stretched resources. Aid agencies say hundreds of thousands of people have returned in the last few months. Sustainable development is crucial for a people hoping independence will improve their lives by creating a steady stream of work. Harun Mutasa, AlJazeera, Juba, Southern Sudan.
Now, police in New Zealand say the death toll from Tuesday's earthquake has now reached 145. And with more than 200 people still missing, that number is expected to rise further. Search teams from 6 countries have now flown in to help the local rescuers, but no survivors have been found since Wednesday, and violent aftershocks continue to hit the shattered city of Christchurch. In Ireland, exit polls coming out from the election there indicate the ruling party, Fianna Fáil, has suffered a huge defeat in the general election. The polls show the main opposition party is on course to lead the next government, but without an overall majority. It's likely to get just over 36% of the vote. Counting is expected to begin within the next half hour. Russia has chosen an official mascot for the 2014 Winter Olympic Games in Sochi. It was a closely fought race, but one controversial choice was excluded from the final shortlist, despite gaining the majority of public support on the internet. Neve Barker has more from Moscow.
It's the face Russia doesn't want you to see. A creature like no other. This is Zoich. Munching on a ski pole, spinning Olympic rings for eyes. He's hardly the kind of mascot Russia wants representing the country. Still, unlike the other competition entrants, he's gained a massive cult following online.
It was meant to be an entirely public internet contest, but in the end, the Olympic Committee chose the finalists themselves, so the competition didn't really mean anything.
Zoich may have been deemed inappropriate by the Olympic Committee, but perhaps without even knowing it, he's become a symbol of the hopeless state of the country's political opposition. Yegor is currently working on a satirical cartoon based on President Medvedev called Captain Obvious, a reflection, says Yegor, on the president's policies.
The Olympics will be a major money spinner for Russia. Sports stores like this are already capitalizing on hosting the event, and branding is everything if the nation wants to recoup some of the billions spent on hosting the Olympics.
As for Zoich, well, he's got commercial plans of his own. Look out for T-shirts and other merchandise in the not-too-distant future. Neve Barker, Al Jazeera, Moscow.
Well, this is Al Jazeera, and these are the stories making the headlines. Iraq's largest oil refinery has been attacked by unknown gunmen. Officials at the Beji complex in northern Iraq say the men planted bombs and set the plant on fire. One engineer was killed, another injured.
We've just spoken to the deputy director, actually, of the Beji complex, and he tells us that at about 4 in the morning, gunmen did burst in, but the major injuries and the one casualty of an engineer was caused by bombs that were set off and smoke inhalation. Essentially, these gunmen burst in, laid bombs, set them off. They set the refinery on fire, that part of the refinery, essentially shutting it down and killing one of the engineers. Another one was seriously wounded. Now, this is expected to take that part of the refinery out of commission for the next several weeks. He actually says one of the problems has been that it was underprotected, and they will have to beef up security.
That bombing followed anti-government rallies throughout Iraq. These pictures appearing to show police firing at protesters in the city of Fallujah. 12 people are reported to have been killed in nationwide demonstrations. Meanwhile, in Libya, protests are entering their 9th day, and they've been gaining more support from inside and outside the country. These pictures appear to show soldiers switching sides in the town of Zawiya. They've been welcomed by jubilant protesters. Elsewhere, in the capital, Tripoli, Libya's leader addressed his supporters in person, promising to fight to hang on to power. But the international community has now been weighing in much more forcefully. Sanctions coming in from the US and NATO, plus a call for action from the UN chief. There have been angry confrontations between activists and soldiers in Egypt 2 weeks after President Hosni Mubarak was toppled. Protesters want the military to replace the cabinet that was appointed by Mubarak before he stepped down. They say soldiers beat them with batons, used tasers and fired into the air to try to disperse them outside a government building in Cairo. In New Zealand, police say the death toll from Tuesday's earthquake has now reached 145. With more than 200 people still missing, that number is expected to rise further. Search teams from 6 countries are now in the country helping local rescuers, but no survivors have been found since Wednesday. Those are the main headlines. The news continues after Inside Story.
Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. This week, Libya and the winds of change. Libya! 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 Jammed signals, internet shutdowns, and still, the story gets out. The sharpest pen in South Africa. A cartoonist tests the limits of political satire. The award-winning journalist and the award he won for taking down a U.S. military commander. And there's big money in aggregation, our web video of the week.
Why pay for journalists to work when the work of journalists can pay you?
For more than 2 months now, the Arab world's season of revolution has kept news organizations busy and audiences riveted to their television and computer screens. It is difficult to overstate the role that media have played in these historic stories. The citizens of Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya, among others, have seen a combination of online social media and aggressive coverage by satellite news channels drive stories and bring once omnipotent dictators to their knees. And it's happened despite the authorities, and Libya's just the latest example, locking out reporters, jamming television transmissions, and shutting down the internet and phone networks. Our starting points this week are Tripoli and Benghazi, the cities at the heart of the Libyan uprising. A story that, in the absence of professional journalists on the ground, has been uploaded by ordinary citizens for the world to see. In 1988, a well-known Arab figure and part-time author wrote, "When the instrument of government is a dictatorship, a society has no means to express its position and rectify the situation other than through violence. It has no other option but to rise in revolt." Muammar Gaddafi seemed to take issue with that statement in his speech last week, which is odd because he wrote it.
مجموعة قليلة مريضة مندسة في المدن.
The Gaddafi speech was delivered on Libyan state-run TV, where his son Saif appeared before him.
وأيضا الناس من حقها لأنها غاضبة وزعلة لأن في موت في كذا.
The channel AlJazeera has been unusually entertaining recently, if not well received.
One of the strangest things about dictatorships in the Arab world is that they never sort of progressed in any scientific or even psychological way. To put Saif al-Islam's picture up on a big screen was asking for trouble. Of course they threw their shoes. And I thought to myself, well, what an epitaph. 42 years of Gaddafi, and his son is threatening civil war against his own people. And then to see Gaddafi under his umbrella later on, I mean, you know, there is truly an element of sort of Hitlerian dominance mixed with Walt Disney and, you know, Mickey Mouse in all this.
However, state-run TV is just a sideshow. Like Egypt and Tunisia, the Libyan story has